Gracias. Okay. Go ahead, guys. I cannot believe we don't have questions.
No questions.
Wow.
Does that mean that we have really exhausted all the issues during the board meeting itself?
I have a question.
Eva, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I was writing it because I didn't know if you could hear me. I'm sorry,
Sure.
background noise, by the way.
I can hear you.
So I wanted to know regarding this negotiation that you have to do before February 10th. Will you be able to meet the judge's deadline, February 10th deadline, to complete this negotiation? And I wanted a clarification. During this time,
Eva, excuse me for a second. Let me work something out here. We have some technical problems. Give me 2 seconds, please. Sorry for that.
were unable to approve this resolution the first time. You did today. But since that time until now, were you doing it, negotiating with creditors, or were those paralyzed? Because I heard that those negotiations were not going on.
We were not in mediation during this time because we did not have the board's authority in terms of new compensation to put on the table. With the decision of the board today, we now have the authority to put the incremental compensation of the CVI, or the contingent value instrument, on the table and re-enter mediation.
Okay.
Anybody else have questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Next question, please.
Yes, hi, Mr. Resco. I just wanted to ask you about laws 80, 81, 82.
Sure.
What has to happen for the oversight board to approve these laws or favor these laws? And any point of those laws that the board might be inclined to concede given the government's intention to implement those laws in the future? Or is it the board's views that they have to be, that they cannot be approved in the future?
Just to be clear, the board is not making any policy decision with regard to the laws. Like them, don't like them, agree, don't agree. There's only one consideration under section 204, and that is that they be consistent with the fiscal plan, meaning being fiscally neutral. So if legislation is adopted that spends money that is not assumed in the fiscal plan, then in order to be able to implement them, the government has to show us where the savings will come so that they are neutral and are not an increase in spending from the fiscal plan. So if we with the government can identify in working with us what they will do, what savings they will have from the fiscal plan to be able to pay for these incremental costs, then the board can agree that they're consistent. To date, the government has not shown any sign of any savings that would pay for the extra cost. And so we're not in a position to add $8 billion of incremental spending to the fiscal plan. That eliminates, to a large extent, the ability to get debt deals done if we keep incrementally adding spending to the fiscal plan.
So if these laws remain as they are written, can these laws go to the same path as Law 29? Is the oversight board inclined to take the government of Puerto Rico in Title 3 so these laws cannot be enacted?
Law 29 is an example of when there was no effort or ability to have a consistency with the fiscal plan. However, right now we made no decision today. We deferred any legal actions because the government this morning agreed to not implement the laws until such time as we can reach agreement on how they can be consistent with the fiscal plan.
Okay, that was Salud Santana from Metro. Now let's give it to Christian Ramos.
Can I say something?
Justin Peterson would like to speak.
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to add to what Natalie said that I applaud Natalie for responding to the Commonwealth on this today. She's right that we can't increase spending without decreasing it somewhere else. I mean, we have a budget, so I've been vocal in my belief that the board should set guidelines and parameters and let the Commonwealth officials govern. And I think this is a great example of them understanding that they need to sort this out and asking if they can do that, not implementing it. And I applaud Natalie for bringing this to us today.
Thank you.
Christian Ramos, el vocero. Christian, you there? Well, let's go to Michelle Kasky, Bloomberg.
Hello, thank you for the press conference. And just wondering, where do things stand with PREPA's debt restructuring? What's the next step? Are there to be further negotiations, additional negotiations with creditors, with bondholders to try to amend the debt restructuring plan, or is this just a question of waiting for the new legislature to come in January and having, because the lawmakers on the island would need to approve a debt restructuring plan?
Thanks, Michelle. We'll get some feedback there. The last time we came to the legislature, the legislature doesn't, I don't know where to start. The legislature doesn't need to approve the debt restructuring, but the legislature needed, in the case of the RSA, as it was negotiated and as it was filed in the Title III court, to actually do to pass legislation that would allow for the securitization. That RSA required that the legislature actually approve legislation to approve the securitization. The legislature at that time, pre-COVID, was unwilling to do so. And then COVID hit, and all the board has done is put it on hold. We have not said we're going to renegotiate it. We have not said that we're in any way going to not live by the agreement. We have just stepped back in order to try and figure out how to get through both the changes in the economy from COVID, but also the need to work with the government and legislature of Puerto Rico. And as you say, we now have a change in governor and legislature. So it behooves us to try and bring everyone around the table again and make sure that we can actually move forward. If we cannot, if there's not a possibility, then we need to work on finding out how to move it forward. So the goal of the board is to end the bankruptcy at PREPA as soon as reasonably possible. And we are looking for every way to do that on the basis of the RSA that has been filed in the Title III court.
John Marino, reorg. John?
Yeah, hi, Edward. I'm sorry. I was
Hey,
listening to
reorg.
this weird reverb loop, but anyway, I just want to know what your sort of prospects are for the negotiations, given the turnover in the oversight board that will be happening over several weeks. We expect. Do you think can be fruitful given the sort of uncertainty surrounding the
John, you might need to.
You're breaking up, but I think I get the gist of your question. Your question is, generally speaking, can the board be effective or fruitful in negotiations, given that there are pending changes to the board, new appointments to be made? I think the answer is yes, we can be fruitful. I think good faith negotiations can occur, will occur in mediation, and I think that for example, the CVI that we added and put on the table needs to be discussed. It's the first time the board has agreed to provide a CVI as part of the compensation, part of the recovery. And there is a great deal that needs to be discussed on how that functions, how it works, what it means. And I think that there's every intent to, on every one of the board members, current and I'm sure pending future, whoever they may be, to bring Puerto Rico out of bankruptcy. So it is what it is. The board members are likely to be changing and or being reappointed, whatever the president decides. But the bottom line is the goal of getting out of bankruptcy remains solitary amongst all.
Okay. You might need to turn off the streaming of the meeting, please. Christian, you're back. Christian? No, Maribel Telemundo?
Hello.
Telenoticias?
Hello. I know that you answered this question before, but I need to know if your expectation are to approve the debt reduction before February.
Okay. Again, I can't predict the future as to what will happen because there are, hundreds and hundreds of parties. But what I can tell you is that every effort will be made to do this, and we will be reporting to the court as required, no matter what, by February. Hopefully, having finished this process of negotiation. That is our goal.
I just would add that this builds upon the previous question from John about are we going to be successful? Natalie's right. You can't predict the future. I think what's important about today is that we move forward and that we're going to mediation. That's what Judge Swain has asked for. She's also asked for the negotiations to be conducted in good faith. I'm very much committed personally to ensuring that that happens and ensuring that all stakeholders, not just the creditors, but also the Commonwealth, believe that happens. And so in the midst of whatever happens with reappointments or new appointments, the important thing is we're moving forward. And I think we're all committed to the same thing, and that is getting a deal done and ending bankruptcy.
El licenciado Omar Marrero se encuentra conectado.
Omar Marrero, I don't think so. No creo. No. No more questions? Well.
Oh, can I make just one question additionally?
This is Sadot Santana Metro.
Yes, thanks for the bonus. Mr. Peterson, I just want to ask you what changed because, and can you explain what happened in the last meeting that you withdrew from the meeting, and now you changed your mind and approved, sided with this resolution for the plan of adjustment? What changed in your mind?
Thanks for your question. So what was at issue in the last meeting was that there was an amendment on the table which would have eliminated what I consider to be an essential component of this process. That is that negotiations should proceed to filing. And I broke quorum because the resolution would have or could have been amended to get rid of that requirement. After the meeting, I can refer you to them. I tweeted pretty clearly why I left, and in that I made pretty clear also that I would reconvene at any time for a consideration of the original resolution. As I said today, I don't think that the proposed plan of adjustment is equitable or fair because it takes from people who have never been paid and gives more money to people who have never been impaired. So I don't think that's fair. But what was important to me is that negotiations must proceed to filing and that we don't tie the hands of any potential new board members coming into the process from having a say on what those negotiations are. And so today, the resolution we voted on requires that. And at the end of the day, my goal is to advance the process. I've been very clear, very vocal that, we should end this. We should get a deal done. And obviously there's other deals we have to do. And then we should get out of this process because the people of Puerto Rico deserve that. They deserve execution on our part. And today was a good day on that front because we're moving forward.
Christian from
I have a question. I have a question.
Well, give me a second. Give me a second. There's someone who Christian Ramos has having problem with his computer. So he sent a question is for Mr. Peterson. What will be your position if the negotiations are not conducted in good faith as you have asked?
Well, I think we made it clear today that they will be. So I trust and I am ready to do my part that they will be.
Eva, go ahead.
Just wanted to know if you could tell us, I know it's very early in the negotiation, at this point, what changes is the board willing to accept to the terms that you proposed today? Because of course, this new proposal cuts the debt significantly. So do you have any, can you tell us, I mean, at this juncture, what aspects of this new deal will you be willing to accept changes to if the creditors ask?
We
No,
certainly aren't going to negotiate against ourselves right now. So we got to get into mediation and see where it leads.
Yeah. In addition, Eva, I mean, all of that is mediation confidential. There's even as the process continues. What you know today is what we have made public in terms of what we're willing to put on the table. Again, incremental to what you saw was negotiated in mediation last time and made public by disclosure September 30th. So it is we have added the CBI to the previously negotiated proposal that was on the table that again was made public on September 30th. So beyond that, now it goes into mediation and is confidential, mediation confidential until such time as something else becomes public.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm Jose Alvarado from Caribbean Business. A question to Mr. Peterson. In a recent interview, you said you perceived that the oversight board was micromanagement. Its policies were micromanagement of the government of Puerto Rico, and that the government here should have a space to implement measures. But at the same time, you're saying also that the debt service has to be higher. And my question isn't there a contradiction in that, in the sense that if you the oversight board needs to basically have the government of Puerto Rico implement measures that raise enough money to pay bondholders. In that sense, what do you mean by micromanagement?
Okay, thank you for your question. Great question. Well, I think those are two separate things, but let me take each one of them on. First, what I've said and what I believe is that the board should set guidelines. Boards, generally speaking, set guidelines and they let the company executives run within those guidelines. And I just a few minutes ago thanked Natalie for helping us have a collaborative relationship with the Commonwealth with how she handled the Commonwealth's request on Act 80 or 81, 82 is an example of they're asking us, we understand guidelines, we understand we need to work within a framework. To quote, I believe one of your former governors, he said, I think he said at one point, I'm going to tell you what size of the room is. You all decide how the furniture is arranged. And that I think needs to be the focus of the board. Stay focused on the big picture and let the Commonwealth's duly elected leaders run the Commonwealth. So I'm committed to that. That's what I've said before. And as I pointed out a few minutes ago, I think that what Natalie did today is a great example of us being collaborators and cooperators and working together. As to your other question, look, I think that I have pointed out a concern, and I still think it's true, that throughout this process, Commonwealth has outperformed the board's fiscal projections. And we talked a lot about that today. I don't think we have to go through it all here now. Again, because we covered that ground quite well. As my dad would say, we beat that horse pretty well. Whenever there are changes to the positive in the fiscal plan, the result has been that there's just less money for creditors. And I think that's the sort of thing that gets in the way of getting a deal done. It's not about telling the Commonwealth how much they need to pay. It's about being very clear with what available resources for debt service are. And we talked about values today in that discussion. And I agreed with a lot of what was being said. You know, this is about the people of Puerto Rico, and a lot of them have been served well by this process. I agree with that, but you know who hasn't been served well by this process are retirees who own bonds. You know, these people have been paid nothing, zero, for 4 years, and you've got other people that have not been impaired. And so what I want to do is help bring some closure to the gap that I think exists on what are the available resources for debt service so that we can get a deal done and end this.
Doña Isabel, en Nuevo Día.
Good afternoon. I believe I shared my question. However, this question is precisely to Mr. Pearson. Hope you're doing fine. Now that you're going to be part of the negotiations, if it happens that there's no agreement with creditors, and since PROMESA allows the board to file a plan of adjustment without creditors concerned, would you support that move?
You know what? I believe we're going to get something done. I think that everybody's committed to good faith negotiations. The judge has been very clear that's what she wants, and I'm believing for the best.
But what if after you try, it doesn't happen?
I don't want to deal in hypotheticals. I think right now what's true is that we decided to move forward, and that everybody I heard today, everybody on the board is united in their desire to have negotiations be done in good faith. And I believe that's what will happen.
Okay, thank you. I do have another question regarding PRASA. I would like to get some detail in that transaction. Why refunding a transaction? I mean, why refunding PRASA? We're not getting new money. And I would like to get some details in terms of savings and why would we, I don't know, how long with this new issue will be. I'm just trying to understand why we're going to be refunding this to then go ahead and settle this loan with the GDB creditors.
So, Johnny Isabel, all the slides will be up on the web, and we'll send you them separately. But let me answer a couple of the questions. It goes back to the strength of the municipal bond market right now. PRASA is a very good candidate to issue refunding bonds and reduce its debt service costs because interest rates have come down and they have access to the market as a result of the way we've approached the reprofiling previously. The exact amount of savings will depend on the amount of bonds that are actually issued and at that moment in time where the municipal yields are. And we can't tell you exactly where that will be, but until the transaction actually occurs. But what we did look at with AFOP's help, this is AFOP's work, is that the market right now shows that PRASA will be able to save money on the refunding, and that's the purpose behind doing it, saving money so that more money can be invested into the water system. In terms of new debt, PRASA can't afford, frankly speaking, incremental new debt. It's not yet at balanced budgets. But this can help it to get there, but incrementally adding to debt service right now would not be possible at PRASA. What is possible is this refunding, and the DRA transaction was in essence kind of something to clear up any difference of opinion and get it done.
And when do you expect this will happen? Before year's end?
I think that is the hope.
Okay.
One last question from Jamie Gonzalez, Univision.
Hi, this is a follow-up question. For many months, you have been saying that having a job or doing volunteer work will be part of the requirements to access the benefits of the nutritional assistance program here in Puerto Rico. How will you handle the cases of citizens who have a physical disability and can't work?
Thank you. It's an area that I'm going to have to get you more detail on, but let me just kind of outline. The board has for 4 years now been asking the government to implement work/volunteer requirements for the food stamp program, for the NAP program, not unlike what is common practice, if not required, on the mainland by in many states. The government has not yet implemented the policy. We wanted it to be done quickly. And the fact, in the beginning, the request was that the requirement was that it be done in 1 or 2, one or 2 years. The government has chosen to try and drag that out over 4 or more years. So it hasn't been implemented. The question that you're asking specifically about disabled, I'm sure there is a detail in the work volunteer education requirements. Again, it doesn't have to be work. It can be volunteering, and it can be volunteering from home. In fact, it can be education. There are multiple ways to fulfill the requirements, and these issues have been dealt with on a best practices basis in many of the states. So I don't know the exact answer. We'll get that back to you. But again, I think the more important thing is the government hasn't implemented this yet. And let's remember why it's really important. We want to incentivize people to start joining the labor force as much as possible. Labor participation rates on the island are the lowest in the United States and the lowest in the region, almost one of the lowest in the world. And so all of this is meant to get people more active and engaged into the potential labor force.
Okay. Thank you. We're running out of time, so thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving to all.
Thank you.